Hello everyone, this is Jim Lewis at Model Train Technology, modeltrainman.com. Today we're going to go quickly through installing our NANO board into this Caboose. Usually we have, this is an N-scale Caboose, it's a short one, and usually we use our regular Caboose board for this, but as you can see, it's too big. So this customer actually sent me two of these, and we hadn't installed in this short one before. I'd seen it, and it was on our list, but we never got to it. So I picked up the box later on, and guess what it says? It says Train Man. So I guess we're destined to work on this. All right. So I'm going to aim the camera down at the bench, and we're going to get to work on this right now. So let's see if I can. Just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so here are the components that we're going to use today. Of course, the Caboose, I pre-disassembled it, if you will. And so there's the carcass and there's the main body. You can see there's a weight on it. We're going to put the NANO board right there. We're going to use some double stick tape to do that. And interestingly, so we always include a chip. This is a 2000K, sort of a yellow chip to light the cupola. And the problem here is this chip doesn't fit inside the cupola space. On the first one we did, we ground this down. But later on, we came up with a better technique. We're going to use our dome board. These we use for lighting the inside of N-scale and NHO domes. They're a little bit longer. I've already cut off one end for the other project. And we're going to snip it here. At each end there are solder points, and we only need two, so we're going to just clip it there. But what I did the other day, instead of with our Caboose board, as you can see here, we usually mount it this way so the lights are facing up. It's kind of an unusual setup, but it works pretty well with the Cabooses. This time, because we're going to use this, we're going to put it inside, and it's going to be in the ceiling, which is great. So then what happened is we discovered that gave us a surface to mount the chip, which will shine up and light the Caboose. So that's going to work out great. We'll just use some super glue. Also with our Caboose kits, we have an N-scale dongle. That's what this is. There's a red LED inside this little dongle. And this is a piece of 0.5 millimeter fiber optic. And here's a set of our lanterns, and what we do with this is these are already painted and we have green on the sides, and so I'm going to just push this through the hole. And right now I don't have my viewing goggles on, so it's a little bit tricky. Actually, let me dive that on since you can't actually see me anyway. So let me do this, get it right in there, and it just slides in. And what we're going to do, let's just get right to it. We're going to take some super glue, and we're going to put it just a dab on the end of this wire, this fiber. Just get it wet, and then just pull it back through the lantern until it's flush. The front is flush. And then we're just going to dab it with a little, the super glue off. And that's all it is. We're going to come back, and in a couple of minutes, we're just going to clip that off. And we're going to put it in the back here, in the back of the Caboose. Let's see, probably this end. I'm going that way, okay? So that's that step. All right, so let's get back to the main project here. And all right, so the first thing to do is just to take off the weight. In this case, there's screws. Not such a big deal. The problem that I first saw in this is that the size of the weight exactly fits the inside dimensions of the car. And so what that means is that if I push this on here, I have nowhere to run the wire for the wheel pickups, which we're going to get to in a couple of minutes. So what I did is I unscrewed this, as I just showed you, and lo and behold, that goes all the way through the car. So as long as I don't have to use the screws to attach this, I'm in good shape. Well, so let's see what's kind of surface here. I cleaned this up a bit, and with double stick tape, and I put this right here and give that a firm firm push. Be careful not to break anything on the underside. And there we go. And it sits a little bit higher. We'll keep the stays in there, but that's how we're going to mount the weight. And we'll just go ahead and do that right now because that's an easy step. There's no change to that. Take the tape off, get this right in there, lined up, and there we go. And you know, it is possible the cars, you know, the double stick tape dries out over a little time, but we've had pretty good success with this. There's not a lot of tugging and pulling. So that's the first step. The other step that we could probably do is cut a piece of tape to match the back here. And it doesn't have to be perfect because what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it. So just take this and lay it on the back as straight as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. The double stick tape is just about the same size as the board. I cut it a little bit long, and if you take a sharp knife and you just go through and use the edge as a straight edge, you can trim the double stick tape pretty well. So don't use a tip because you know, this is where you work and get stuff dirty and everything. I push the knife back where it's nice and sharp and just get it going. I know they said that. Oh, there we go. And there we go. We'll do a little, oh, we got the paper there so we don't, okay. So now I'm not going to attach it right now because I need to run the wires up through the bottom. So let's get that going. Actually, let's get that going. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our end scale floating brass, and this is pretty thin enough I can just cut it with regular shears. So that's what I'm going to do here. Cut the end, cut 2 pieces off. And there we go. All right, so get the soldering iron fired up here. And the way I do this, let me see if I still, yeah, so we're still on the camera down here. So what I do is I put the 2 pieces flat like that and just hold them down with some blue tape. All right, so let's put that away and get the solder iron. All right, so the solder iron is heating up. I could have started that earlier, but I didn't. So let's go back to this this piece right here. So I want to cut, I want to use, I can only fit 2 lights in because, well, let's see. No, because I won't, let's see, can we get 3 in there? Let's try it. The other time, where the location of the resistors are, in this case, at this end of the board, I have 3 resistors for the lights, and I'm going to have the cupola light. So if I can fit that in, maybe sand it a little bit, let's try it. This board is pretty durable, and all we need to do is just take some shears and get it really close but not on it, and give it a nice firm, get that square, and just pop it. And there we go. So there's that, and let's get that little piece of 120 sandpaper. And just be careful. Jim's just going to round the corner a little bit, and I'm going to just sand this end. I've got a lot of space to solder, and there's a distance from the solder pad to the edge, and I've got a tight fit, so I can sand this down just a little bit. I'm just going to round the corners, and let's see how that goes. Oh, look, that fits perfectly. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to use 3 LEDs in this one and go to town on it. All right, so now the other thing. Let me get something to point with. There are 2 tabs here, one here and one here, that hold the cupola in. And so I can't put this flush onto this surface, but the height of those little stays is just the right height for my double stick tape to get above them. So I'm going to cut 2, I don't know, 1/2 inch long pieces of double stick tape. And I'm going to attach them at the ends of each of these board. And this time I'm going to line up the end and a little bit back, so I don't have to trim that. Well, I'm going to end up trimming this a little bit anyways. All right, so get my knife out again. And just good sharp knife, it works great. Trim it, I'm going to trim it beveled a little bit. I beveled it back, and I'm going to trim this one beveled back, and I'm going to trim this one beveled back, and this one. And there we go. So it looks nice and neat, not much to it. All right, so this is going to be on the ceiling. This is going to attach to the ceiling. So what we have to do is attach our LED, and I'm going to just line this up and make sure that I've got space for that LED. And the orientation isn't critical, but the LED is oriented this way, so I'm going to orient it the same way as the width inside the caboose. All right, so that's it. And guess what? We're just going to take out the super glue and just put a very small amount on and attach that. Kind of rub it a little bit. And we'll put that aside for a minute, just let it dry a little bit more. We're going to be soldering and connecting all these wires, and then we're going to run a length of this wire off of here to our nano board. All right, and then we'll connect up the fiber optic. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's test fit it. And let's see, I'm going to use these guys here. All right, I'm a little bit off center. So what I'm going to have to do, I thought I got that right, but let's see how it looks this way. Ah, see? So perfect. So that's how it's going to look inside there. So the chip is going to shine up into the caboose, and the rest of the LEDs will shine down. I'm not going to attach it because I'm going to solder this, and of course solder this side, and I don't want the solder iron anywhere near my plastic carcass. So I'm going to put that over on the side. And now I think my iron is hot enough now. I've got a Weller station, and the secret to good soldering is this. I mean, you can get a soldering iron almost anywhere. They're all pretty much the same. But this is a wet sponge, and this is where the soldering tool goes in. So you get into a habit, it's pretty easy. You take this out and you just roll this, and you see how silvery that tip is? So that's nice and clean. After you solder a bit, you'll see it'll turn dark, partly because of the resin that's in the solder, and just the dirt that comes along with that. All right, so first thing to do is on the floating brass, get a little bit more of the solder here. This is kind of the only tricky part, only because I just want the barest minimum. Here's another tool I use. This looks like a kind of funky thing. Looks like a Brillo pad inside a dish. And what happens is if you stick there's a little bit of drip of solder on here, and I don't want to start with solder on this project. So you just go like this, and the metal, the sort of metal shavings, get the solder off the tip. So now I've got a super clean tip. And this is something that's just on the station over there. I should have that. If you have those two things, the actual soldering iron, just a basic hot iron will do the trick. So I'm going to touch the metal, get it warm, and then just put a little dab on there. Mustard seed size, all right? Get it a little bit better. And that's all there is to it. So we want to have, good soldering technique is to have solder on both ends of the project that you're working on. So in this case, we're going to get a little bit of, let's get an extra length of this wire. I'm going to cut it. Now, this one is soft enough and small enough that I can strip it with my fingernail. So I just reach in very gently and pull it, and then I give it a twist, and that twists all of this is a stranded 30 gauge wire. Do that, and don't worry too much about the ends, because we're going to trim these anyway. All right, so the next thing to do, and this is just day in and day out habit with the different kind of wiring projects we're going on. Okay, just grab it, hold it up like that, and we're going to tin, which basically means just solder and clean the end of the wire. is not cooperating. All right, so there's a very thin layer of solder. And so now when we go to solder these two things, the wire has solder and the brass strip has solder, and just a touch of heat and we're done. So you don't want to bring the solder together when you're trying to bring all of these three things, when you're trying to get it connected. Just do it ahead of time and it'll be a snap. All right, so as you'll see, we want to have alternate sides of the brass on the wheels. So we're going to just add a little bit of heat here, and I'm going to switch directions and have a little bit of heat on this side. Okay, and there you go. All right, so just touching it, and the solder that was on the wire and the little bit that was on the brass are all set to go. And that's the most challenging part of the entire floating brass installation step. Okay, so let's get to work on this. First, we want to make sure the wheels that you want to use are called insulated wheels. There are two types. One where the axle is insulated from both wheels. And there are cases where, like Kato wheels, are insulated on both sides because they have pickups on both sides of a single truck. What we're going to do is we're going to use one side of this truck and one side of this truck so that we get the two rails pickup. That means that I need to make sure that the insulated side of the axle, in this case, is they're both on the right side. And in this case, they're not. So this one is insulated and this one's insulated. So we're just going to reverse them out. And since the controller, the decoder, our decoder, doesn't care which side is which for DCC, it doesn't matter either which side you have insulated and which one's not. Let's just get a little bit of something in there. Okay. Okay, so that side is connected, and now we want to have this side insulated, so this one needs to be reversed around. Now, in doing this task right here, I noticed that there is an enormous amount of crud on the wheel. So I'll show you what we're going to do. If I go through this whole project and don't clean that off, it's not going to work very well. Probably not going to work at all the way this is set up. So this car was not set, you know, it looks like it's getting a lot of use, which is great. Customer must like it, and so we're going to make sure, and so the way we're going to do that is we're going to just pop off the truck. We'll do one at a time, drop the pin on our work surface so we know where it is, and then, I don't know if you have one of these things, you're supposed to put it on the rail, and then the wheels will run and everything, but so count to 50. And I'm going to edit the tape so you don't have to see me do this 50 times, but the wheels will become nice and shiny. Let me see how we're going so far. Yeah, well, it's going to need maybe 100. Okay, I'm going to see if you can see. So the one in this hand is the one I've cleaned, and the one in this hand, this one right here, is dirty. Hopefully you can see there's quite a bit of difference. This has got a lot of crud on it. This one's clean. So again, we're going to inspect that all around. All the crud is off the wheels. That looks good. And so now we're going to cut and come back after I clean this wheel. Okay, we're back, and we did a fair amount of scrubbing to get the crud off of those wheels. So now we're just going to put these back, and they need to go in the same direction we had before. One side is insulated and one side is not insulated. So that's the insulated side there. And the non-insulated side goes that way. All right, so just make sure they're on opposite sides. If they're not, and you put it on the track with your DCC or your DC system, it'll complain. It'll beep or short. So just pay attention to what you're doing there. Not a big deal, but it's good to pay attention. That looks good. Okay, so the next step is attaching these brass strips, and this is N scale and this is small, but it still works pretty well. So what I'm going to do, the first step is underneath the axle. I'm going to feed it through, and you know, sometimes it's easier to do this when the wheels are off, which I should have done, but it's okay. Feed it under the axle, and now we can go straight through, and there we go. Okay, so that's the first step. Now, so I'm looking at it. So now you can see that the solder, there's a little solder on this tie, but the wire's soldered underneath. So what we're going to do is we're going to go underneath both. You can bend this a little bit. We're going to go under both axles and get it to about there, and then we're going to just press it down so it goes under the other axle. There we go. And now we have to pull it through, and I'm turning the truck a little bit so I can get it there. All right, so now pull it through straight so that you get the solder joint just in the middle of the truck, if you can get that. It's not critical, but just a good practice. So I'm going to bend it up a little bit, and there it goes. Just pull it, and I'm going to pull the wire through, so that's straight. And so the next step, all right, so we're going to just bend up this side, just like that, to about 90 degrees. And I'm going to bend this side up to 90 degrees. And so that's going to pull those axles in a little bit. And then I'm going to trim to the height of the wheel. It just happens to be the good spot to do it. So you can see there's a little bit of stub there. And now all I do is simply wrap this around the axle. And at this point in the process, I want this to be tight. So as you push down on this, like I'm doing right now, it pulls the axles towards each other, and it wraps around the wheels, and it's a pretty tight fit. Now, once we get the car all assembled, what I'll do is I'll loosen this up a little bit, and also I'll run it back and forth so that the axle and the metal can get some good contact, clean off the metal itself, a little bit more on the axle, because we don't have an easy way to clean that. And but it's running. I mean, it's very, very smooth. Okay, so now we'll just do that same process on the opposite side. And just go through that. Feed the wire under the axle, out. Guess we'll make that standard procedure now. And then feed it through that hole that was used to hold the weight on. Comes out. There it goes. Comes out the other side. Pull it through. And we're going to pull this around and try to feed it through there. Okay, so now we got it through. Okay, now when you pull to this point, it's going to stop where that solder joint is underneath. So we're going to just pick it up a little bit again, pull it just slightly, and then pull up to 90 degrees, pull the wire through the rest of the way, and you can see there's plenty of play. So even after we connect the wires later on and all that, there's the hole, and if there was no hole, we would drill right here on the back end, not up here, but back here anyway. So we'd find a spot on the back side, and it gives plenty of pivot. The wire never gets in the way, never slows things down. All right, so we've got the wire now at 90 degrees. We're going to cut them again. Okay, that's it. And now we're going to just pull this around and tighten it. Pull this around and tighten it up. Sometimes when you pull one side, you'll see a little bit of slide back on the other. The thickness of the metal we particularly chose to be able to do that. It's soft enough but firm enough. It's sort of just right. Okay, so that's the whole wiring for the truck part, and so that's what we got there. Okay, so this is dry now, and we can go to start to wiring that up. Okay, so let's start wiring up and soldering some more parts together. So we'll need 2 wires to come from this board down to the nano board. This is more than we need, but it makes it easier for us to do the work while we're doing the soldering. And then we also need to solder from these 2 points to join up with this. So we'll get a little bit more wire for that purpose, and we don't need very much of it, probably. For the 2 pieces, that's probably enough. And I'm going to fast forward because all I'm going to do is what I did before. I'm going to grab this and strip the wire, twist it, grab this, twist the wire. And in fact, on this case, let's see. Yeah, let's do these 2 first. And I'm going to fast forward so we're getting to the point where we're going to solder it on the board. Okay, we're going to solder onto this side of the board first, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this down just so it stays in its place. Here are the wires that we tinned, and there are 2 pads here, and I need to tin them as well. So a little bit of solder, a little bit of solder. That's all it takes. I already trimmed off this, and let's move this around a little bit for my right-handedness. And actually, you know what, we're gonna solder these back across the board. So rather than having it stick out this way, we'll have it stick across the board. And just part of that is just about wire management. So there's a minus side and a plus side, and later on we'll just need to make sure when we connect up which is which. Okay, so that's the cupola light. So now we're going to join these So let's see which we've got here. Okay, so we've got plus on my left side, and we have plus right here, all right? So let's see, yeah, I can do this around this way and this way. Will be just keep that out of the LED. All right, so here's what we're gonna do here. So here's the, face this way. Here's the pad that I wanna solder on, and I wanna connect this other wire here. So I'm gonna clip this about 1/4 of an inch past, all right? And then I'm going to strip it of that quarter of an inch, okay? So that you can see that the end of the wire is just about landing where the pad is. So now what I'm gonna do is with this wire, strip it. I haven't tinned this one yet, but I will. I'm gonna join these two like this and twist this around. This is really fine wire. It's thinner than hair. But anyway, you can see now I've got these two wires connected, and I'm just gonna give them a shot of solder. Okay, like that. That's all it needs. And now I'm going to clip off, so I have a very short piece there. And I need to tin these two. Right, and now what I'm going to do is use my tweezers, this little tweezer doohickey here, tape that down, and I'm going to fasten this to the, and that's it. That's just a touch, right? That's all you need. Don't hold it there. Don't put a glob of solder on the soldering iron. Once you've added solder to the tinning process, that's all you need. So now before I go on, I've soldered one. I want to just double check. All right, I've got plus going to the plus side. These are labeled. It says NP plus and N to minus, okay? So there's my first wire. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this side. Okay, I'm going to clip it a little bit past so I can grab onto it. I'm going to be very careful about, there we go. Okay, strip that, strip this one. There we go. And I'm going to mix these two together. See if they're all right. So you want to get the installations even. Don't worry about the wire because we're going to clip it off. So you just want the insulation to be at the same place. And let's see, let's tape it down like that. Grab our solder and soldering iron. There we go. Wiping off on the wet sponge each time. Come through here, clip. And now let's move this around this way, I guess. And I'm gonna pick this up and solder it right to the board. Now I noticed my solder on the other one went over the board a little bit, so I'm going to just take these nippers and just nip off the very end of the tip of that wire. Okay, so there we go, and that will fit inside here like that. And here are the wires that are going to go down and connect to our nano board. All right, is there anything else we have to do here? Nope, the last step will be to connect the wires. So we're going to take the double stick tape off, and we're going to use this tool to place it. Just give it a little bit of a firm press in there. And there we go. So we have 3 lights in the Caboose. We have the cupola light, and we just have the 2 wires hanging down. So we're in really good shape there. All right, so the next thing to work on, and this won't take very long, is the N-scale fiber optic rear light. And this thing is so small, I don't know, I'm gonna hold it up, but well, let me clip it off this tree. That's it. It's, oh, there it is. That thing is really tiny. So it's painted green, 2 green lenses on either side, and the end is going to be red. And I know that because we have a red LED here. So this is going to just slide into this hole, make sure there's a good fit. Let's also make sure, just quick check with our check device here, basically 9-volt battery with a resistor and a diode in there. Oops. And sometimes this is a little awkward. The wire is so thin it slides out. So anyway, here we go. And I hope you can see there's a red light shining through there. And that's going to light our lantern. Okay? Whew. All right, so now the next thing that we need to do is drill a hole, a very tiny hole, as a matter of fact, into the back of this caboose. And I know this particular bit that I have here is too big, but I think that one looks good. This one looks good right here. It only has to be as big as the fiber optic, and it can be tight. We're going to put some more super glue in. Once we pull it through, you'll see that. This doesn't take very long. All right, so let's take a look at this. I think we want the stove in the front or the back. Does it matter? I think it looks good that way. Okay, we just got to be careful of that guy. And we're going to put right back in here. So the lantern connection is practically in the middle of the lantern. So that should direct us to put the hole pretty much in the center of this back space so it's visible out the back. And doesn't take much. And we're through, and I'm just going to bring it back and forth to kind of clean it out and open it up. Let's check the inside. A little bit of extra debris there. I'll use our knife to get that out. Beautiful. Okay, so let's test fit and actually the lens has a little bit of fiber sticking out, just a fraction. So I'm going to just take the nippers and cut it so that the fiber is right flush with the lantern. Okay. Okay, so you can see that I just slid the fiber optic through the hole, and that'll hold the lantern. Let me just pull that out. And now if I turn the fiber, you can see that the lantern's turning. There is an up and down side to this. All right, so we want to get that right. And we want it to be straight. Okay, so the next thing, I'm going to keep these handy. I'm going to back out the lantern. I'm going to get my little glue pad, put a drop of super glue there, and then I'm going to find a toothpick. And I'm going to take the toothpick and I'm going to put a little dab on the fiber on the back end of that lantern. And when I pull it through, the glue will just go into the hole and I'll be all set there. And so let me just pull this a bit. Won't take long to set up, so let's make sure we get this right where we want it. Okay, so you can see, let's see, there's the lantern, there's the profile, and it's pretty small, but it's N-scale, it's an N-scale lantern. Just twist it just a little bit. Looks good, just fine tune adjustment there. All right, so we're gonna leave that for just a second and we'll come back to it in a minute. Here we've got our double stick tape on here and we're ready to mount this. And it really doesn't matter how the wires go, I mean the direction. This thing is, sometimes it does, but we're gonna just do it like that and we're gonna just mount it, and the double stick tape is gonna help keep the wires straight, and then we're gonna connect them up here. Now you notice the wires are coming out the end and we have lots of space at the end, and that looks good, perfect. Okay, so let's just take this double stick tape off. Let's go back and hold these wires down for a second. Center this just for looks. And that's having a hard time. Let's see if we can do it. Sometimes the wire, I have two double wire there and it's getting in the way. So I decided while we were doing it just to pull the wire out the back side. So we've got good contact surface in the middle. The wires go out the outside. That's good. And I can just bring this wire over here to attach it. So not a big deal. All right. And it doesn't matter. It's DCC. These are the DCC wires. So it can go either way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to solder these on right now. So let's, okay. So it gives me a little bit of extra there. Clip it and go through the same routine we've done with all the other wires. We're going to clip them. This one we're going to face that way. And we're going to tin them. I'm spinning it just to get the braids or the strands clean, and you know, good organization there. And this time I don't have to hold the wires. I think the car is heavy enough against this, and we're going to tin those wires. There we go. And now come back and clip them. Good. And I think what I'm going to do is keep this guy from moving around. Oops. All right. Yeah, let's see. I think I can shorten that a little. All right, so let's attach this. Oops, let go too soon. All right, that looks good. And I'm going to attach this. Don't have it quite at the tip of the wire, so there we go. And I think we've got too much wire on that. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to shorten it a little bit. Yeah, I like that better. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so let's get out our piece of test track and hook this up to our DCC system. We're using a Digitrack system, nothing special. Works with NCE, ESU, Sprague, Iowa scaled shield that goes with Arduino. Works with everything. Oops. Okay, so we have a wheel that is not right. And it looks like it's this one, right? Okay, so we've finished soldering the wires on there, and so we'll just pick up our test track and put it on the car. Now we don't have any lights on it, and there's no test light on the this, but we can connect it to our DCC system and check reading the variables. And so we're going to do just a read of the display, CV read 32. So we know that the wheels are making contact and the board's working because it read back the version number of the board. So we're in good shape. That brief test is done, and we'll disconnect these and we'll come back in a couple of minutes. We'll test the lighting system. So we'll get that all set up. Okay, so our lantern is fixed now, and so we're good there. I'm going to attach the lantern. So this is going to go this way in the car. So we're going to clip the fiber optic, and the LED lamp is going to go sort of in this direction. We like to feed the wires or solder them back in towards the middle. If they're hanging out, then they get in the way of the putting the carcass back. So this one will just clip like that. Now this wire, these are pre-wired LEDs. This wire is very thin. It's at 36, gauge 36, and it's almost like magnet wire, and you can't strip it. Well, you can, but it really starts to make a mess. So what I'm going to do is another technique that you may use from time to time, and that is I'm just going to burn the insulation off. If you have magnet wire, it comes lacquered. And so what you have to do is actually a version of what I'm going to do right here, which is just to start some solder on the iron. Turn my fan on, get the, there we go, and just run it back, and it just burns off a little bit of the insulation very neatly. So just get it hot and get it just sort of pushing it back. It melts that. And that's all there is to it. That's the easiest, cleanest way to get a nice connection on the wires. They're all tinned up and ready to go. If I have a little bump there, I can take that out. Let's get rid of the extra insulation just with a knife here. And these wires are a little bit long for where they're going to be soldered onto the board. The board space for the auxiliary pad is pretty tight in there. Okay, so it's this pad and this pad. So what we're going to do, turn the car around, and plus and minus, so we should be able to get those lined up, and just dab of heat. And these pads have already been tinned earlier. I keep letting go. Let's try one more time. There we go. Okay. So we have that connected. And so what I'd like to know is if that's also working. So we're going to put this up here, put it on the track, and lo and behold, I have function 3 turned on. I can turn it off. There we go. And there we go. We've got okay, we've got the fiber dongle connected, and we're going to just test it out on the track here. Get the wheels on. There I got. There we go. And let's see. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but we have light. All right, so just put that aside, and let's go on to the next step, which is connecting the fiber dongle to the fiber optic. So I'm going to cut the fiber optic about midway through the car, and what that will do is that will locate where the dongle will go. All right, so now it will snap back if I don't hold on to it. And just as we did before, I'm going to take some super glue and just stick it into the pipe a little bit. There we go. And now I'm going to take the dongle. It's a little tricky, just kind of getting everything, holding it up the way I want. And we're going to insert. There we go. Insert it all the way in. Hold it there for a second, and there we go. All right, so that should be good. And we've got a little bit of extra wire over here. Put that off to the side, and so you can see that's going to just slip right in there. That's gonna work out very nicely. Okay, now all we have to do is connect up the main lights to these two connections here. And we'll try to keep them fairly short and do the same thing we've done so far. Clip them off, strip them, now what I recommend is just to be careful. Whenever I have the iron out, right hand, and I don't do anything else but deal with the iron. I learned on one of my cars, after I finished soldering, I was waving the iron around and doing other things, and I just nicked the car. It's a hot iron plastic, and left a little mark there. So once that task is done, put the soldering iron back into its holster, and there we go. Okay, so now I have to figure out which wire. They're both black, but they're labeled on the board. So this, let's trim these up. This one too. Okay. And this wire here is minus, and this wire here, let's turn this around so I get a good view. So this is minus here. Okay. This one. Goes here, and this one, okay, now this is way too close for comfort, so I'm going to try to move this around. And there we go. Just going to double check that before I put it back together. That's minus, going to minus, yep, all good. Okay, so I'm going to put that wire, fiber optic wire, inside here and sort of, nope, I'm not going to push it in all the way. I'm just going to leave it a little bit loose. And with any luck, we'll have lighting and, well, I know that one's on. And there you go. Let me turn this off. Turn it off. There we go. Okay, so we can see the rear fiber optic. I hope you can see that. And it turning on and off, and then I can turn it into blink mode. And then the lights, I'm going to put them in fade. There we go. And set the brightness. There we go. There we go. Good. Okay. So other than some putting it back together again, that's just about finished.